when you want to teach a full range chromatic scale level 3 and 4, just tell the students to turn to page 92 and take a look at that full range chromatic scale. Before you tackle this is probably the most daunting scale in the entire book. Please teach your students the chromatic chunks before. Go back to level 1 chromatic chunks if you haven't already done those, and then go to level 2 and then 3 and then 4. If you do all of that first, then this full range chromatic scale won't be so difficult to achieve. But the full range chromatic scale on page 92 is the chromatic scale defined by GMEA for the first round 9th and 10th grade All-State audition and the 11th and 12th grade All-State audition. The bonus to this one is that it has annotated fingerings underneath so that especially your woodwinds, will know which pitches to do alternate fingerings for. Your brass will know which pitches are on that flat 7th partial and which ones they need to lip up or do a shorter slide position for. And then percussionists will know that they need to alternate. So the full range chromatic scale uses sharps ascending and flats descending. This notation can be very confusing for young players who tend to struggle with those enharmonic notations, seeing a D sharp and knowing that that's the same fingering as an E flat. Sometimes that's kind of hard for them to grasp. So I tell my students to look up each pitch in the fingering chart, literally touch it, even if they're a senior in high school, touch that note on the page and then touch it in the fingering chart and make sure that the fingering that they looked up matches the annotation underneath the pitch in the scale. This is a lot of effort for some students. A lot of them come to band, they just want to play music, but you got to study if you want to be good. So you got to make sure that they're doing this. So while you're working with one group, say you're working with the horns, then you've got to make sure that the rest of them are at least semi-actively studying the letter names, fingering charts, and annotations. So like I said before, chromatic chunks and chromatic scales are not designed to be played as a full band. They just don't, the ranges don't match up. You could have a big group, like you could have your tuba, trombone, euphonium, trumpet, they could all play at the same time, but mostly, by and large, they don't really match up. Just when you do this, just like I said, work with the horns, and then once you get done with the horns, move on to the trombones or whatever order you want to do it in. But while you're working with one group, everybody else in the room is either studying or airing and fingering. And I would not go through all of the instruments in one class period. That's not going to be very effective because you're diminishing returns over time. You want to use a shorter study time, 15 minutes max. And to sum up any of this chromatic scale study time, you want to allow the students to just everybody play all at once. Turn the metronome on and let them go to town. Yeah, it's going to sound terrible. It's going to sound like havoc is wreaking in your band room, but it will allow them to put all that study and airing and fingering into practice. And my students, when I taught at South Forsyth High School, we did a chromatic scale every single day, or a chromatic chunk every day. Same thing at Liberty Middle School. They once they're at least in 7th grade, some of the 6th graders, it's a little too hard for them in the beginning, but late 6th grade, all the way through 7th and 8th grade, they're going to be doing either a chromatic chunk or a chromatic scale every single day. So you're going to play this scale slowly at 66 beats per minute and have your students obey the annotations. If it's too hard to play it, then at the speed, then you can slow it down, you can make it half notes, you can do whatever you need to, but slower is better. And then gradually speed up to 120 beats per minute, that's the level 3 scale, and then 144 beats per minute for the level 4 scale. Just have them play the scale over and over and over and over and over until they memorize it, and double check them, look at their fingerings and make sure that they're actually using the annotated fingerings. Check the brass with a tuner and make sure that they're not just letting that 7th partial go really flat.